Hello, welcome. Very nice to be here as always. I trust you're doing well and happy, right? Well and happy. We've done this conversation about time a number of times, and it always changes, although there's a core to it. There's quite a few of you who are new to Mastering Alchemy even, that have never really had access to this conversation. So we wanted to do it again, or at least do it from this standpoint of what's going on, because there's something really interesting that is happening with time. What that is if you go to 100 people on the street and you say, tell me what time is, they will tell you it's past, present, future, and then you die. There might be two or three of them that have some variation on that, but pretty much that's the answer in three-dimensional life where we play. But something is happening as this shift of consciousness unfolds. It's like the morning dawn. You get out when it's dark and you sit there and the day begins. If you try to pay attention to figure out when it's getting lighter or how it's getting lighter, you can't measure that because it's just consistent and it's subtle, and you can't see a big change from second to second. But if you were to sit there and close your eyes and then maybe 30 seconds and then you open your eyes, you would say it's lighter. Something changed, it got lighter. It looks the same, but it got lighter. Do it again, it got lighter, it got lighter. That's really what's happening around this shift of consciousness we're in. And it's getting lighter around the edges. You're beginning to see or know or experience something new, and yet it's so subtle in so many ways I can't distinguish. Time is one of those pieces that is beginning to not beginning, it's been going on for some time, beginning to, for many, start to have a different context to it, a different opportunity to it. It's beginning to function slightly differently. And yet, if I just live my life and I get up in the morning and I go about my business, I really never even pay attention to or notice the subtle changes as the day moves from dark to a little lighter. And many people don't even pay attention to the day as it progresses through the hours. This aspect of time is beginning to have more dynamics to it. So what I thought I'd do is explain this nature of time, how it works. Because time is an application, it's not a fixed, rigid construct that is the truth. Past, present, future, you die, that's all there is to it. The challenge with viewing time as fixed and rigid and a given truth is it becomes extremely restrictive to your ability to adjust yourself. What I mean by that, and many of you will understand this, is I had an event in my life, and my favorite thing is sophomore year in high school, girl tells a joke to all her friends or newfound friends, and they all laugh at her, not with her. And right there at that moment in time, a decision's made. I'm never going to tell a joke again. I'm embarrassed and I don't know how to engage with people. I'm afraid that if I say something, I'm going to get laughed at. That decision was made in 1 or 2 seconds. But the results of that decision is a lifetime. Does that make any sense to anybody? We've all had that event, something of that nature, where we thought something and the opposite happened. We did something that was positive and somehow it turned out to be negative. And this aspect, when time is treated as a rigid thing and it's fixed, the past becomes the past with no opportunity to adjust or change it. Now think about that for a second. See if you make sense of that, because if you can hear that, there is an enormous opportunity in front of you. Because if you happen to be that sophomore year girl or boy, or the event of something, as soon as I gave you that example, you went, oh yeah, I have one of those. First, the fact that you can identify it that quickly with just something randomly being said right here about time says I have an attention point that I'm holding unconsciously, or I'm aware of it, but I try not to look at it. And it's something that holds me in a position that does not allow me to freely engage with life on my terms. Now let me say that again, because it's a core of everything we're going to play with right here. I've had an event in my life. It didn't go the way I thought it was, or other people told me it was wrong, I was bad, I shouldn't have, blah, blah, blah. And I reacted would be a better word, and made a decision that because of that, there is a restriction now in my space that says I can't go over here, I can't go talk to people, particular people, because they would know. Fill in the blank. It's a story. We have an event, it's in the past, it was uncomfortable, and then I've got to create a story around it in order to make myself able to move around and not be paralyzed by it or guilty by it or blaming myself intensely by it. And I make up a story and I allow the story to be okay, or else I just say, I can't deal with this. So I put it over here on the side, but somehow it still jumps up every once in a while. So I make a decision. I put it in this backpack, this place behind me, and I make a deal with it. I say, I will never go over there by those people if you promise not to come out and bite me in the butt and make me feel bad. Anybody know that story? And maybe you don't know that story. I guarantee you have that story, but you may not remember that story because that event is buried. So what does it have to do with time? What if that story, you in fact are aware of it? And what if that story has a pang of guilt to it, or a sense of inappropriateness, a blame attached to it? Does that serve you? Does that have any value to you? Or let me ask the question differently. If you did not have that, would your life be a little bit freer? If you could just wave a magic wand and simply that event disappeared, would you take a deeper breath? Would you find that your body might relax a little bit from a long-held suspended tension in the body? Would you have permission to engage people differently? Now, just think about that for a second. If I could change that thing, that event, would I be different? Would I respond different? Would I be happier? Would I be more comfortable if I didn't have that in my attention point references? But see, here's where time is an application. It's not a fixed truth. So if you hold it as a fixed truth, 3D, past, present, future, and then you die, that fixed truth is simply a fixed truth. There's no room around it. But if you were to recognize that time is an application, not a fixed reality, then the ability to possibly look at that event without all of the emotions, the trauma, the dramas, and be able to make that magic wand real and simply recognize this has no value to me in present time. Right now, if I asked you the question, does that event, assuming you have one consciously, does it have any value to you to be carrying around? And the answer is generally no, it has no value. But you don't understand, Jim. it happened, it's a truth, it did happen, and I don't know how to unravel it. So that answer is really just simply, time is past, present, future. This is how I understand it. And because this is how time is, therefore, there's no way of changing that event in my past. But if you began to recognize time was an application, not a fixed linear line, the opportunity to begin to do a lot of things differently would begin to be in your awareness. So let me see if I can explain this in a slightly different context to set this up. Now, numbers of you have heard me explain this in the past, 3D, 4D, 5D. What is that dimension? How does it work? Hear it again, because there's a lot of light that's beginning to be in this awareness that in the past, when you've heard this explanation, you've heard it and maybe not been able to hold on to it, maybe not be able to understand it. Maybe it's like, okay, that's interesting, but, and I forgot the whole story. When you start to look at the game that we're playing, and I'm going to call it 3D, third dimensional game, just we're going to label it that, and we're going to call it a dimension, a construct that we came here to play a game in. Well, let's call it even a box. And in the box, there's a set of rules and structures. And then there's also a fourth dimensional box and a fifth dimensional box. And actually, you're playing in all three of those boxes simultaneously, although you don't have, or for the most part, people do not have a set of reference points to recognize where they are. Nobody told you this is how this game is played, and here's the rules and the structures. Have you ever played a game, a card game, a gambling game, and didn't know the rules? Now, you might be lucky playing at it for a little while, but if you play at it for some length of time, usually by not knowing the rules and how the game's played, it usually doesn't work out well. That's pretty much the case for not understanding the rules of each one of these boxes. In this 3D box that we have, there are a number of things about this 3D box that makes it very unique. And this 3D box is very different than the 4D and the 5D box. In the 3D box, one of the constructs of the box is linear time. Past, present, future, you die. And if you do something and you don't like it, too bad, because it's now locked in place. And so people play the game in 3D to unconsciously that says, I've done these things and it didn't work out. I got in trouble, yelled at, or didn't feel good about it. And I'm aware of it. I'm going to hold my attention on it because I don't want it to happen to me again in my future. And I definitely don't want anybody to know that I did this thing in my past. Past and future. Predominantly how the game is played in 3D. There is an aspect of present time in 3D, but it's very interesting because present time is reactionary in 3D. And so all of a sudden that thing I did that I hope nobody knows about, somehow in circular time, we'll talk about that in a minute, comes up and represents itself. It presents it in a different size, shape, color, but it happens again to me. How come this happens to me again? Why do I keep running into this thing in my life? Well, when it comes back around, and if it's of an uncomfortable aspect, we're in present time, and it's usually, oh my God, this isn't supposed to be happening. It's a reactionary moment, present time. Now, some things I was told this is how life was supposed to work. If I did these things, if I followed the rules and went to college, got married, had my 2.3 kids, white picket fence, everything would work out really well. And so we hold that as a target into our future. And we follow a set of constructs that we figured out in the past, put into habits, created beliefs, and then pretty much unconsciously kept working forward to that. Many people very seldomly examine what they determined was going to be their future in many ways. It's all built on a linear timeline. The other parts of this 3D box is in 3D, there is nothing unconditional. Everything is conditional. Now remember I said you live in 4 and 5D also where unconditional lives, but 3D, conditional. In 3D also, you have constructs of duality. Right, wrong, good, bad, should, shouldn't. And in all those pieces, there is an off-balanceness for many people, particularly because my past is now creating my future. It actually is creating your future, you just don't recognize what's in the backpack. See, there's another piece of this that cuts across all 3, 4, 5, all of the dimensions. Everybody has heard it. Most don't understand it, but it's very, very simple, called the law of attraction. What I put my attention on is what I get. Well, said it a little differently. The universe says to you, what you put your attention on, the universe who adores you, will provide you. And you're the creator being, so I have no room to second guess your decision making, your judgments, your opinions, your creations. I simply will provide you exactly what you ask for. The challenge with that, where people argue with that all the time, is because I want something really nice. I want well-being, and I don't get it. So it obviously is the fault of the law of attraction. Doesn't work. But you see, the universe doesn't understand English, French, and Spanish. It understands vibrations. So the universe says, what are your vibrations? How are you vibrating today? This is one of the reasons why affirmations don't work for so many people. You sit there and say, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, 10,000 times, and it's the last affirmation. Unconscious many times, but. I'm good, but. I hope this works, but I've got to go to work and I don't like my job. And so the universe says, oh, wait a minute, time out. When you're really aligned with what you want, I'll give you what you want. As long as that but's sitting there, I'm just going to go on pause. But I will respond to what you are asking me for. And to a great extent, what you're asking me for is doubt, limitation. I'm not okay, I'm not smart, nobody likes me, I'm never going to succeed. Because that's what people told me, knocked me off balance. I didn't like it. And so I put it in my backpack and hoped it would just go away and nobody would see it. But I have a lot of attention on it, even though it's unconscious. Please don't come out and bite me in the butt again. And so the universe wakes up and says, where's Jim today? And, oh, I see, he's still holding his attention on he's not very smart. So I'll give him more of what he's asking for. Now, third dimensional box coupled with law of attraction. One of the things in that third dimensional box is there is no such thing as choice. In the third dimensional box, now remember there's a fourth and fifth. In the third dimensional box, it's reaction. There's no choice. When you start to become aware in the fourth dimensional box, a couple of things change. The primary thing is you get into present time. Present time. There is no past. There is no future. Notice where you are right now. You're not sitting in breakfast today or dinner tonight or tomorrow's work. You're right here listening in present time. Now there's a whole lot of memories and thoughts and considerations that are flowing up to the surface as I talk. But pretty much I'm right here in present time. When a person gets into present time, a couple of other things begin to happen. You have choice. I say to you, what would you like for dinner? Hamburger or salad? I'll have the salad. So choice. I have choice in present time. doesn't exist in third dimension. There's another interesting piece to this fourth dimensional box: present time, choice, and an interesting word called paradox. Paradox simply means what was true before may not be true at this moment, and what was false may not be false at this moment. What makes that really pretty exciting is when you can get into present time and you have choice, you actually can begin to look at your past, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, and look at it from the standpoint of, does this thing in my backpack provide me any value? Does it have value to me? Is this something that I wish to continue to carry around? You see, because in present time, which is the only place you really exist, there were past present time moments, there will be future present time moments, but they all happen in present time. And in this present time moment, right here where we're sitting, some of those limitations or guilt or blame, that's an emotion attached to an event, if you begin to ask yourself, does it serve me? Would I be more comfortable if I did not have that? Now I'm going to make an assumption. The answer is yes. So we'll get to how do I do that? We'll do that in a few moments. So fourth dimension, present time, choice, and paradox. Now what's interesting about paradox, again, is what was true then may not be true, and what was false may no longer be false. I have choice. When you start to step into this fifth dimensional box, a lot of things change, including time. In this fifth dimensional box, it's all about well-being, and one of the avenues into the fifth dimensional box, or one of the structures of the fifth dimensional box, you cannot take your baggage with you on this journey. You cannot take, I'm not okay, I am not smart, I'm not attractive, nobody likes me, I am guilty, I have blame, I'm a victim. Can't take any of that with you. So that becomes a challenge, though, maybe because I got this backpack full of stuff and I can't take it with me. So this is where that word paradox and choice and present time come into play. If that's how the game is structured, this is how it works, then what do I do to clear out the backpack so I can step out of this guilt, blame, victim, lack, and step into well-being, joy, co-creation, cooperation, beauty, grace, happy, dignity, etc. There's only one restriction in the fifth dimensional game. Can't bring your backpack with you. So this is where it begins to be interesting. So with that said is the background, time. Let's talk about time. Time has 5 different applications to it. Linear time, present time. There is a aspect in that linear space, but it's predominantly reactionary. Fourth dimension, present time, I'm here. Fifth dimension, present time, I'm here. But when you start to begin to really be here in present time, and you start to recognize that I can clean that backpack out, you also begin to recognize that time is slowing down or time is speeding up. And you actually have the ability to slow time down or speed time up. It's just simply how you begin to hold your attention point. Keep coming back to that attention point. Can I manage my attention point? Besides slowing it down and speeding it up, there is an aspect of present time that's called circular time. And circular time is something that I've done this before. Gee, this seems really familiar before. I've had this set of thoughts before. I've had these events before. A lot of times, from a third dimensional space and what's in the past, comes back to give you an opportunity to clear it out. But when I only believe in linear time, then when my baggage shows up to be cleared out, I usually panic. I don't like this. I don't know what to do with this, is what my observation is people say. But circular time is simply presenting a circumstance again in a different color, size, shape, but this is all too familiar, in order to let it go, in order to approach it differently, to smooth it out. Circular time, when you play in 3D, usually comes up to bite you or present something that's awkward, because it's all about cleaning it out. Circular time in present time, in 4-5D space, the ability to recognize, oh wow, I thought I dealt with this, or oh, I recognize this, I would like to not have this in my backpack any longer. And so circular time is something that happens to many people because they don't know how to manage the attention point, but yet you, as you're moving into this space of light, this fifth dimensional space, everybody's on their way there, as you begin to move into this space, that backpack is now beginning to release itself automatically. It's that higher part of you is saying, okay, you've had a lot of time to gather this and you've had a lot of time to clean it out, but you don't have a lot of time anymore. Time in the third dimension is running out. Oh, let me say it another way. The third dimension is going away. The continuation of playing a game of domination, imposition, greed, fear, etc., the game is over. It's not going to continue. Now, I get a lot of people can't hear that. I get it. So just take me on face value here. So if that in fact is what's happening, have you noticed that sometimes you're more emotional, or sometimes you're off balance, or sometimes memories are coming up that, like, why is that happening? All of this is beginning to rise to the surface, to be let go of. So understanding that time is not linear, and understanding that you have some choices to clear out that backpack without having to go through all those emotions, is really a valuable place to play. And it's pretty effortless in real terms. We'll get to that too in a few minutes. So it gets really interesting because as you clean out that backpack, and as you begin to move into a space where you realize that I don't have to be controlled by a lot of these unintended attention points, a number of things happen. One is you begin to recognize I'm in this world, but I'm really not of this world. Meaning, I never fit in the first place, a lot of people say. I don't know why I'm on this planet. I don't fit in. There's a reason for that, because you don't fit in. You didn't come to really play the game of victim, rescuer, persecutor, worry, blame, guilt, those kind of things. But as you begin to recognize you can let go of that past, you begin to recognize there's a whole lot more going on that nobody ever told me about. That I can manage myself differently than I have been engaged to this point in my life. And so this is where that circular time begins to be of value, because it just simply gives you the opportunity, with some tools, to just clean out that backpack. Now there's a couple of other aspects of time that are very much all about present time. They are not readily available, and yet you know about them. There is this aspect of simultaneous time. And simultaneous time is available to be played in when that backpack is being cleared out. It's not available in 3D. It's not available really very much in 4D. But as you begin to find yourself managing yourself and no longer really identifying with the noise and the drama and the I'm not okayness that the world holds our attention in. You begin to step out of that world and you begin to recognize that I have choice. So it's in this space of choice where, as you start to also put yourself back together, level 2 work, you start to find that choices begin to be made available in simultaneous time. You start to have inklings, just thoughts, awarenesses. I wonder if this is possible. I never thought of that. I bet this would be interesting. These thoughts begin to happen. A lot of those thoughts are now in this simultaneous space, and as 3D begins to dissolve, it's going to take some time, but dissolve, there is a level of light. Now hear that softly, a level of interesting new thoughts coming into people's awareness, opportunities, expansion. I bet we could do it this way. So you're watching this unfold on a timeline, this yearly timeline, monthly, daily, but yearly, decade. You're watching the world around you begin to go through lots of change. And the change is part of these waves of light that we keep talking about that are coming in, that are dissolving that backpack. So what it's all about, dissolving the backpack, beginning to give people permission to recognize they're okay. They're not subject to that backpack if they recognize in present time, I have choice. So in this aspect called simultaneous time, it gets really interesting. Because in simultaneous time, when you are present in choice, happy, comfortable with yourself, all of a sudden I just have this new idea or this curiosity or this new thought. A lot of that is coming from higher aspects of you, higher self, the oversoul, etc. But it is also coming from, I choose not to play here, this terminology, but it works here, past lives and future lives. Because past lives and future lives only happen in simultaneous time. It all happens at the same time. But in that simultaneous time aspect, you have access to, in present time, all of those past and future lives. And it's not so much looking at a past life as, was I the queen or the whore, or was I the king or the janitor? That part doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what you were. But what does matter is, did I solve this? Or has anybody, meaning all the other past lives, have experience with how to handle this, or how to improve this, or how to create this, or how to experience this? So in simultaneous time, you begin to have access to a wealth of information because you're no longer paying attention to the past and worrying about the future. You just begin to have these curiosities. And many of you playing Mastering Alchemy already know you go from that of the world but not in the world concept. And many of you playing in Park Bench have been very aware of being at that center point of the sphere. So here is where it begins to be interesting on how to use time, how to manage time, how to take advantage of time. It's an application. So one of the first things you want to know about time is time passes through you. You do not pass through time. So you are the fixed point of consciousness. You are not in movement through a fixed set of time. So when you get out of the linear time game and you get into present time, you're simply here. Now you're simply here. But now you're simply here. See, that first here has already passed you by, in a manner of speaking. It's passed through you. You never moved from the chair you're sitting in, and a few seconds now have just gone by. So time passes through you. The other part of beginning to recognize how do I manage time and create in time what I choose is where we played in Park Bench and in Mastering Alchemy, is bringing you to that awareness that you're the center point of everything. Everything. And in that sphere of light that you've created in level 1, those of you who played there, and on into level 2 and 3, you're that center point. That center point is right in the center of the Sacred Heart. And it's happy, and it's quiet, and it's very aware. And we'll play here in a moment. But in that space, if you could consider that everything is available to you, that space, and one of the things, as you get more comfortable with time and playing with these tools, clearing out, letting go of who I'm not, you start to find an interesting consideration. Everything comes to you. See, time passes through you, and all of these great thoughts that you think up, that you can hold your attention on, universe says, I will give you what you hold your attention on. But in that quiet center point, we played with this a number of times. If you could just think of all around the inside of this sphere that you're sitting in, right at the center, let's call it like your computer to monitor. And the entire edge of the sphere is computer monitors. We're just creating an example. All of those computer monitors have motion, have things going on, but they're not in your attention and they're not in your asking. And so consequently, they just are there, but pretty much unobserved by you. But when you say, I would like to know, how does that work? How is it possible? Type of question. The monitors that relate to the question amplify. And so this is where the answer to the question lies right where the question is asked. And if you can begin to be quiet in present time and comfortable and aware, what happens is as you start to have curiosity, that answer begins to appear in your awareness. And it's all about time. Simply, how is it possible? And there begins to be the answer in present time. So this aspect of time is really pretty central to being able to step into your own elevation, your own ascension, however you would like to phrase that, and begin to step out of the I'm not okay and very much begin to experience everything that's starting to present itself. So time gets even more interesting from that point. Because what you understand as parallel moments are very real and they're very accessible. It's like, well, let me have this experience, and it's as you have that experience, and then let me have the other experience, and you actually have all the information to that experience to make choices. There's even another aspect of this where in simultaneous time you are able to what you would refer to as time travel back and forth, because there is no back and forth. There's only everything happening simultaneously. Those last two aspects of time happen in the etheric body. They don't happen in the physical body. You can be aware of all this. It's when the physical body begins to be realigned with the light body and you have more capacity to experience yourself from the etheric body, simultaneously having access to the physical body, a lot changes. All of that is accessible in the process of this shift of consciousness that we're playing in. I already talked way too much about that, so let's play with this a little bit. Take a breath and just sit back with your eyes open. And take another breath, again, eyes open. And would you intentionally be present? choose to be present, whatever that means to you. I'm quiet, I'm present. I'm sitting in my chair, my eyes are open. I'm looking through my eyes at the wall over there, the picture, the window, the door, whatever it is. I'm right here. Now, would you be right here and would you look at something over there? I'm in the center of my head looking through my eyes. My eyes are wide open and I see that door, picture, whatever, right over there. And would you be clear, I'm here and that is over there. Now, as silly as it sounds, and would you take another breath? And would you be aware of being in your body? I can feel the weight of my body. I can feel my butt on the chair. My feet are on the floor. I can feel the heaviness of my body. And I'm comfortable. There's no thought other than this thought. I'm right here. I'm comfortable. And then would you relax? And notice that's not a thought, it's an action. I'm taking another breath and maybe a bigger exhale. Leaning back into the chair. Comfortable, relaxed, present. Now, would you have the mind, the rational mind, the thinker, would you just simply choose, and this is a choice, to be quiet? That means that secondary, third thought that's way in the back that just keeps chattering. It's like, okay, am I doing it right? Is this right? I think I'm quiet. Just have that be quiet. So no thought, your eyes open. And would you be aware of yourself just sitting in a chair? Notice if the rational mind started thinking, no problem. Just choose to be quiet. And then would you just look around the room and would you see what you see, but would you not say what you see? So there's a picture. I see the picture, but I don't have to call it a picture. I know it's a picture. And just slowly look around the room at what you see. Know it without labeling it. And if you stop breathing, you most likely started thinking. Those two things go together. So again, just a smooth breath, comfortable, relaxed. I'm doing nothing but sitting in a chair, being aware of myself, being present. Now, see if you can just hold this space and very softly, not in a large way, very softly. Was there something in your past that happened that was a little awkward? A small thing. Just a small thing. Awkward. Maybe something didn't work out. You were embarrassed or somebody blamed you. Not the deepest, terriblest thing you've ever done, just something. Maybe somebody didn't approve of you. Again, not deep, just, a teacher that I just didn't get along with in school. Simple. Now, just hold that, and then again, I'm just sitting in a chair. I'm aware of that picture door over there, but I'm right here. And then would you ask yourself, this thing in my past, Does it have any value to me sitting in this chair right now? Any value at all? I don't have to fix it. I don't have to amend it. I don't have to apologize to somebody. Right here, I'm just sitting in a chair and I'm aware of this experience. Does this have any value to me? Now, we're going to do this two ways because there's an awful lot of you who are new to this, so I'm going to make an assumption you don't know about a number of things in Mastering Alchemy. For those of you who know about 4th, 5th, 6th ray, this is where you play. For everybody else, would you create in your mind a mental image rose? Do you remember what a rose looks like? And imagine it right out in front of you. And this little thought, does it have any value to you right now? If it wasn't in your awareness, if you did not have any recollection of this, would you be more comfortable? This isn't a big deal, so it's probably not something you even thought of often. But if it wasn't there, would you be freer? Have more freedom, more room to consider other thoughts if this thought wasn't in your awareness, even though it's unconscious, wasn't in your awareness? And if the answer is yes, playing with the 4th ray, would you just simply loosen it up? It has no value. If you're playing with the rose, would you just play? We're going to give you a new thought. Would you allow this rose to collect it up? It's as if you just put it in the rose. It's no longer in the backpack. This rose is very happy to collect up everything that's lesser than itself. So that's usually everything uncomfortable. And for those of you in the playing 4th, 5th, 6th ray, as you look at it sitting on that 5th ray bench, does it have any value? Does this experience, thought, have any value? And if not, return it to the library in the sky, metaphorically speaking. And those of you with the rose, would you just let the rose absorb this? And would you explode the rose? It's just simply let the rose dissipate back into energy. Really simple. And would you notice I'm still just sitting here in present time, comfortable, eyes open, not thinking. Now, in present time, I have an enormous amount of room to simply move the furniture around, change the game around, begin to recognize, does this have value to me from my past? Now, there's another aspect of this, because here we want to recognize a really valuable tool, piece of information. The past is made up of two things. A piece of information, I had this experience, and an emotion. And my experience was sad, uncomfortable, whatever it may be. But what allows you to step out of the third dimensional game of linear time is an understanding that emotions, feelings, can only exist in the present time. They don't exist in the past. They only exist in the present moment. So, my example, I was divorced 20 years ago maybe, and it was sad. Or my mother died 20 years ago, I am sad. But when you take a look in present time at an event, my mother died and I'm sad. There's two pieces. One is a piece of information. My mother died 20 years ago. But I can only be sad in the moment. Now, if you are able to simply separate those two things and allow the event to be a piece of information. My mother died 20 years ago. That happened. Now, do you choose to be sad about it today in an event that happened 20 years ago? I could miss my mother. I enjoyed my mother. My mother was a great person. Gave me great information. And it's really, I would still like her to be around. No emotion. That's simply conversation about an event. But when you add sad to it, you are sad right now. And that's a choice in present time. I could choose to say, wow, I had a great experience with my mother. She was really wonderful. She gave me a lot of great information. I loved my mother. I had so much fun with my mother. It was really a great time when she was around. That's a very different set of thoughts than choosing to identify with the loss of your mother 20 years ago when that occurred in present time. So how do you choose? Do you continue with an unconscious set of thoughts and emotions that simply become habits that we hold our attention upon? Or can you recognize, I have power, I have capability, I have choice. My mother died, and I can think of her in this moment as I had so much fun with her, or I'm still in stress and sadness because she's not here 20 years ago. So for 20 years I've been carrying this, oh, poor me, my mother's gone. But would you like to change that right now? Now, no thinking. Would just be quiet. Now just consider, not a lot of thinking, just consider. The past is made up of past present time moments, which you have the capacity to observe, not go back into the past, but from this moment, I went to high school, I went to college, I had this job, I drove a car. All of that is in my past. Many of those different topics, what did you have for breakfast, has no emotion on it. And when you say, well, I had eggs and bacon for breakfast, there's no charge on it. There's simply an awareness of information that related to the past. But if you were able to simply take this consideration and begin to bring some of those events where I'm not okay, or they didn't like me, or I'm embarrassed, start really soft, and you are to play, bring them into present time, 4th ray, 5th ray, 6th ray, even the 8th ray. But right here, if you don't know those tools, then this rose. Can I allow the event to be the event without an emotion? And does the event have any value in my space right now? Do I have any reason to hold my attention on my mother dying 20 years ago right now? And in that moment, without an emotion, you put that in a rose and explode it, and simply where the charge of the sadness was held as an attention point, that the universe says, oh, I'll give you more of that sadness if you really want to keep holding your attention on it in past time. Or you could let that go and begin to realize how much of you lives in the heart that you've been missing, which is very fifth dimensional. Happy, gracious, capable, certain, enthusiastic. Yeah, another breath. And then one more. Just notice you're just sitting in a chair in present time. And would you choose a feeling? Happy, comfortable, pleased with yourself? A feeling that creates a smile. Or maybe just smile and notice what feeling matches the event in present time called smiling. So time has many possibilities. It's an application. And once you begin to spend your attention in present time, the opportunity to slow time down, to speed time up, to begin to access simultaneous time as far as information, all of that begins to present itself for your choice. Now, just one more breath. Again, notice I'm smiling. The feeling, I'm sitting in a chair. I have nothing really to do. I'm in present time. I'm in the center of my head, or as I'm looking through my eyes and I see the wall picture door over there. I'm here. And I have a smile. And I have a feeling. Now just wiggle your toes, take another breath. And for the moment, would you simply decide, I'm complete. Right here, real simple, complete in this awareness. I'm complete is a useful aspect of ending something, because quite often in third dimension we don't end it, we just drag it along with us because we believe we're moving through time. But when you recognize I'm sitting right here and time is very elastic and it passes through me, I can manage time. So take a breath, maybe pat your thighs. I'm complete. Let me turn this over to Roxanne, and I'd be curious, what did you just notice? What did you just remember? How is that experience? And maybe any other questions that you might have, we'll take a little time and answer them. Rox, let me turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody. Hi. So if you have a question, you type it into your control panel and it pops up on my screen and I can ask it for you. Let us know if you're a new listener and or if you're involved in level 1, 2, 3 and beyond. And that will help Jim answer your question a little bit closer to what tools you have on your tool bench. Jim, this first one is from Sally, who's in level 2. How is time structured in the dream space? And how can we apply it with our intention for the dream space?
So that's a great question. And the first part of that is the dream space is not what you think it is. And for the most part, in that dream space, time as you know it in 3D, third dimensional time, past, present, future, definitely doesn't happen that way. It's in present time. And what happens is you are constantly creating the experience of the dream. That's not 100% exact, but you're creating the context of the dream by the thoughts you hold as you leave the body. So that etheric body, astral body, more appropriately called etheric body, it leaves
and the physical body goes into rest and rejuvenation, but the mental emotional body and all the other higher self all leave, and the dream space is not the third dimension. And so you have a completely different construct in that space. It's how you begin to manage is by intention as you go into it, and also by going to sleep in a space where you don't take your I'm having a bad day, I'm just going to go to sleep, because that attention point on your day goes immediately into the dream space, and then all the thoughts ever thought, which is what the dream space is, align to the alignments of the thoughts you're holding. So it begins to be mismanaged from the beginning. The way to manage that generally is to start, we've said this lots of times, is create a rose and clean out your day. I mean, give back to everybody what's in your space. Just stop and say, who got in my space? And then when that's done, ask the question, where did I leave myself? You'll see yourself at a stop sign, staring at a can of peas in the store, talking to somebody. All that comes up. Call yourself back. And then intend to enter the dream space. We point to the gardens. Have you gone and spent time in the gardens? Fabulous gardens. You begin to create an entry point that allows you to manage yourself in present time in relationship to a lot that goes on in the dream space. But it's much bigger than that, because you're playing in a place on your way home. You go home every night. It's like you leave the movie theater and then step out into the world, and then you come back to the movie theater the next day, entering the space more than it is managing the time.
Here's one from Brian, who's a new listener. How is worry about the future related to this understanding of time?
You only can create in the present. And so if you're holding your attention on worrying about the future, you're holding your attention in a three-dimensional duality, good, bad, right, wrong. You are drawing emotion into the thoughts, the world's falling apart, or I'm afraid of. And as you hear those words, they become the attention point. Fear is a third, fourth dimensional experience. And when you hold your attention on it, it's very magnetic. And if you hold a lot of fear, that magnet gets really strong. If you can allow it to be, if you can recognize most of what goes on in your reality has absolutely nothing to do with you. Now, what people want to argue with there is like, but yeah, all this going on in Ukraine, I feel for those people. I get it. I understand completely. But what happens is, in a vanilla standpoint, what's going on in Ukraine has very little to do with you right where you're sitting right now. That doesn't mean don't care. It just simply means if you draw the emotion of fear and resentment and etc. into your space, you are creating for your space. It's not helping people in Ukraine sitting in your space worrying about them. So in the context of time, in the context of this conversation, what you hold your attention on is what you create in your reality. And so that level of worrying about the future, it begins to be the creative nature of what you're going to create in your future. So in present time, if you can begin to recognize I'm in the world, but there's a whole lot of movies going on in the world that have nothing to do with me, including your next door neighbor, what they think of whatever it may be, generally has nothing to do with you. If you can begin to recognize I'm aware of those people, I can allow those people, but right here, I'm interested in well-being. And if you can begin to start to hold your attention on what well-being means, and what would it look like, and what would it feel like if I had well-being, and what could I do as simple as begin to create a smile for myself or create an enjoyment. So maybe it's go out for a walk and be in present time and just go, wow, this is really beautiful. Spring, fall's happening in the world. I can enjoy myself. That begins to be the construct that you begin to create your future from. But when it's worry and the past, two things combined, pretty much, if you look around, people who worry and hold a limited attention on possibility of well-being usually get what they hold their attention on.
Jim, this one is from Elizabeth. Can the Holy Spirit only be accessed in the present time, or is it a bridge between all dimensions, or what?
You only exist in the present time. There is no past. There is no future from the standpoint of there will be a future present time moment. And there has been a past present time moment in the context of the linearity that we recognize the world in. You only exist now. So the Holy Spirit never leaves you. You never leave the Holy Spirit. You may not have a definition of it or a recognition of that energetic configuration, but in present time, if you take a breath and begin to just simply get quiet in that heart space, boy, there's the presence of the Holy Spirit. It never leaves you. We usually leave it, leave that whole configuration of beauty and well-being to put our attention in the future and the past.
Jim, this one is from Melinda. Is choice somewhat based on imagination?
Imagination is a really important thing. It's something that is stolen from us generally as children, and it is something in the 3D box that pretty much isn't really allowed. Now, keep in mind, I'm defining 3D box as conditional, because if you could imagine things and you had the joy of that imagination, you would find that your creative capacity begins to amplify and you begin to experience what you imagine. And so you were bright and enthusiastic and talking and creating and really smart. And I'm not like you, but I'm the big one and you're the little one. I would probably tell you to shut up and sit down and stop making so much noise. And there are no angels that you keep pretending to play with. Stop imagining this and grow up, would be the message. Anybody know that message? But where we're playing, as you begin to find this space that was just laid out, and you get quiet, present, and aware, and you begin to clean out the backpack, and you start to put yourself back together, and then put together that light body, which is not a body, it's definitely not physical. It's an integrated system of consciousness that ties you together with all aspects of yourself. It's there you get to play with the imagination about creating the world that's in process of becoming. And many are starting to understand and begin to be aware of their imagination once again, which is one of the great pieces that's unfolding in the opportunistic side of this shift.
Here's a comment from Linda, who's a grad. What a powerful question this is. Does it have any value to you right now? Thank you, Jim, for that.
You're welcome.
And then here is a question from Aaron. Do we play in the etheric body when using virtual reality? Is the etheric body what we embody in the new realm? 2 questions.
Well, the etheric body is what you will have the choice to experience in that new realm that's unfolding, along with the physical body. It's an evolution. The etheric body has a different density construction. In the etheric body, you don't have the same limitations as you do in the third dimensional space. In that fifth dimensional space, it's physical. The same tree you're looking at out the window exists in fifth dimension as it does in third dimension. But in fifth dimension, you don't have limitations. And for example, Aaron and many of you playing in Reset and other in the level 3 work, we've been introducing in this octave, which is what is transitioning. It's a bridging between third dimension and fifth dimension that's beginning to be much more tangible. And one of the things that is in that is a different kind of gravity. Now it sounds, well, that's not possible. Well, yeah, it's very possible if you get out of the third dimensional mindset. And so this gravity, you still have your feet on the ground, but you begin to have this buoyancy, this lightness, and this imagination begins to be very much more available in this lighter gravity. It's fluid, it's elastic, you have the ability to function in present time without past and future even being much of a consideration. There were a lot of changes that come about playing in this etheric body. And it's all being introduced and reintroduced to people. As long as you hold on to third dimension and look back and forward as the primary way of creating, that etheric body is not available. It just can't work in that third dimensional space.
This one is from Cynthia, who's in level 1. How do we stay out of other people's space energetically, and how to tell our projections from our perceptions? Or is reality our projection?
Well, reality is your projection. So playing in level 1, two of the predominant tools in level 1 and two of the predominant tools, whether you never do anything again in Mastering Alchemy, is the rows and the words. And so when you are able to just simply recognize a different consideration, that my aura, if you stick your arms straight out in front of you and turn your palm of your hand towards you, that's approximately where the aura ends and starts. If you were to create a point of delineation, in this case we talk about the rows at the edge of the aura, and you bring your attention to your side of the rows. Everything from the rows to my heart is pretty much mine to play with, and everything on the other side is Shakespeare's theater. When that concept begins to be understood, you start to on a path that begins to be very clear. This is my energy and this is not my energy. And a lot of the energy that's now inside the rows from historical purposes begins to be something you can clean out. And I can discern about that person over there is angry, but they're not angry at me, they're just angry. And so whereas before that anger would be passing through you and you were wondering why that stranger is angry at you, now that anger stops right at that point of the rows. The words become really important because words are generally thought by us, but not felt by us. And so when you get into present time and you start to ask you the question, do you know what certainty is? The mind says, oh, sure, I know what it is. And everybody who hasn't ever played this, take a breath, close your eyes and feel certain. That's a very different experience than thinking certain. So when you start to recognize I can create my alignment in how I hold feelings and how I stay on the side of my rows, I begin to recognize the world from a very different perspective and realize all that anger and resentment and politics, it has nothing to do with me. And you begin to find you're in the world, but not of that world. And that begins to be this whole transitional shift of who are you and how do you wish to experience yourself?
This one's from Shaw, who's level 1. Is being in the center of the head more of a detaching or pulling in?
Yes, detaching from when I'm not in the center of my head, my attention point is out there. I'm feeling what's going on out there. I'm reacting to what's going on out there, and I'm out there. But when you begin to take a breath and get into the center of your head and you begin to be on your side of the rows, all of a sudden it is a detaching, but it's not you becoming detached for yourself, or let me see if I can say that. You are no longer attached to all of what's out there that pretty much has nothing to do with you. It's noise. When you get into your space, it gets quieter. And in this place we just got done playing, with your eyes open, all of a sudden you get quieter and you get aware, and I'm present, and not a lot's going on. Your mind's chattering away more likely than not. And then all of a sudden you start to tell that to be quiet. And quiet begins to be an experience many people have never had. And so from that point, you start recognizing, how do I want to be engaged with the world? How do I choose versus how do I react? And that's a massive shift. Very simple, but a major shift.
This one is from Valerie, who's in level 1, which I enjoy, she says, and really enlightening for her. I feel your words about circular time. I would not say that I'm mastering it, but I do feel it. I would like, though, if you could explain a little more about, quote, things come to you.
You've had moments of experience where you use the word coincidence. It's like, wow, I was just thinking about going to that movie and you just called and said you have 2 tickets to the movie. This is great. Coincidence. In a way, what happens as you begin to play in the space of present time, quiet, and recognizing what you would like to experience, what you hold your attention on is what the universe provides for you. And you simply begin to recognize, I would like this to have happen. And you're not engaged in it. You're not needing it. You're not leaning into it. I got to have it. You're just simply saying, yeah, I would like this to come to me. And it is really to a great extent about managing that backpack, because the mom, dad, teacher, minister of the world have said, this is who you are and this is all you're worth. And even though you could follow this instruction of simply allowing what you want to come to you, because that's what the mechanics of it is, that backpack a lot of times will simply argue with you. If you're a person that has a belief that money is the root of all evil, and then just simply says, okay, I hear you, Jim, I'm going to allow $100 to come to me. You got a built-in conflict, because the backpack is screaming pretty loud that defines the structure of how I believe the world works. But if you recognize money doesn't grow on trees and money isn't the root of all evil, and it's actually a very useful tool if you can allow yourself to play with it as a tool, then money coming to you is a non-thing, as an example. But when you've got that backpack full of doubt and argument and belief structure that is contrary to ease and well-being, then there's a little bit of a conflict. When you clear out a lot of that backpack, level 2 is all about clearing the backpack out effortlessly for the most part. And then you begin to recognize how things work from the heart, thinking from the heart rather than the head. The ability to allow things to come to you begins to be the way it is. And so it's a little bit of, not a little bit, it's not difficult, but it's a shift of awareness. The world told me this is how it works, and all of a sudden here sitting Mastering Alchemy level 2 particularly says, well, it does work that way if you hold your attention on it, but have you ever considered holding your attention on just what we did for the last hour, for example, sitting quietly, recognizing I'm in present time, and noticing, picture the wall is over there, the world is over there. I'm simply sitting right here. And that concept of, can you allow a smile to draw a feeling, generally works. Now, once I'm in that smile and I'm comfortable and I have a sense of my words commanding my presence, certain, capable, gracious, happy, and that's simply who I am, just sitting here with no effort, that becomes very magnetic from the heart, that simply draws to you what it is you would like the universe to provide. It's so simple, but it's not easy. And people say this, it's like you're a freight train at 90 miles an hour, and I'm just sitting over here going, well, just turn right. No, don't think, just turn right. And it's like, no, I'm going to crash. No, actually, you're not going to crash. But that's a belief. And so as long as the belief there, you argue with the concept of turning right.
Jim, this one is from Monica in Poland, and Monica is in the Park Bench project. It is difficult for me to align with my flow at work. It's easy for me to get into the flow generally, but at my office work, I struggle. What might be the case here?
I'm giving more attention to what I don't want than I am giving attention to what I do want. Now, it's really that simple. My rose is up. I put it up. I grounded. I got in the center of my head when I got up, and then I went to work. Well, when you are in that place arguing, is your rose up? I mean, that's the question you want to ask. Am I on my side of the rose? Am I putting my attention on what I do want to be grounded, present on my side of the rose, or am I allowing that person over there to bother me? So the question, again, ridiculously simple, what am I giving my attention to? What I want or what I don't want? And the habit is to get annoyed with, push against. And the moment that annoyance is in my space, am I paying attention to the noise of the world and my habits and my beliefs that I've grown up with, that how dare they say that? Or am I simply allowing the movie to play out in and around me, and I'm observing it but not going to it? Now, there's a piece of this that as that begins to be understood, then there's ways to where you start to create little one-liners. Somebody says something in that space and you're on your side of your rows, you go, oh, well, that's really interesting. They don't know what to do with that because they're waiting for you to argue, to throw energy, to, huff and puff and go away. I'm giving them more power because they're the boss to dominate me and I'm in resentment to it. Well, change that construct. And so it's like, yeah, okay. Or ask the question, okay, I understand what you said, but explain to me how this is going to work. And a lot of times people, because you're coming from a different place, it takes two to play a game. When you begin to be aligned and present, that's not the game they're used to playing. And so they have to adjust to that. And you have a lot of room to assist them in stepping into their enjoyment in life because you're starting to understand how to manage it.
Another piece, Monica, is what you're experiencing is not unusual. A lot of us, when we go into this work office space, we get off balance. It's a chaotic place. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of ungrounded people there. There's stress, maybe in yourself, but certainly in a lot of other people. There's a hierarchy. There's a lot going on. And so stepping into that can be pretty off balancing. And yeah, use your rows. And another trick is to, before you even walk through the door, sit in the car, sit in the bus, stand outside, and just set the tone. So when you're walking into the office building, you're walking into something that is more geared to where you want to be. You're just in park bench, but there's other tools in level 1 and 2. And so one tool is to create a triangle that you stand upon, or you can wear it like a little hat. And each of these legs of the triangle is a word, an energy word. So present, quiet, aware, or whatever energy word combination you want to wear. Successful, amused, grounded. Whatever word combination of words you want to wear this day at work, set that up before you walk through the door. Because once you walk through the door, it's really easy to get whacked. It's really easy to get off balance unless you set it up first. You're the center of the universe. You can do this. And so own it and make it be your experiment rather than being whipped around by whatever you walk into.
Yeah, let me say a little bit more about that. Especially, Monica, here you are in Poland in a real challenging situation right now with lots of tension, lots of people moving in and out, lots of confusion going on all around you. That's the state of being around you. It's not good or bad, it's just the state of being. And so the tools in Park Bench all work. I mean, the things that we've been building, but Park Bench is a course of direction that's creating that new realm of consciousness. Level 1 and level 2 are really the tools to be able to navigate through that kind of stress. This isn't, we don't sell Mastering Alchemy. We don't even advertise Mastering Alchemy. Everybody that plays in Mastering Alchemy pretty much is here by somebody telling them about this. But I'm going to say as loud as I can, those of you who are, if you're in level 1, take level 2. If you're not in level 1, take level 1. These are the tools that are allowing you to navigate the world that is unfolding all around us. And over the coming years, this is going to get more complicated. I don't say that in a fearful or negative way. We've said this so many times that we're in transition. Everybody's going home. We're moving towards that fifth dimensional state of well-being. And the circumstances is with these waves of light is they are disruptive and opportunistic right now. The disruptive part is they are loosening up what's in everybody's backpack. They're bringing rude, jealous, judgmental, hatred all to the surface to be let go of. And so if this work sounds interesting to you, any of you, and you haven't taken level 1, take level 1. It's like 24 hours of do this, what happened. It's specific information about managing yourself. Do yourself a favor. This is really all about bringing people into an alignment so that this whole world can change as smoothly as it can in a time of a lot of challenge. Those of you who are in level 1, all these tools, like that reference to 4th, 5th, 6th ray, 8th ray, it's all about how do you begin to manage this energetic field of yours. And then walk through the seams of the world around you without getting the world around you all over you. Not to be a sale, meant to be really a request. You have opportunity here to make a difference. We believe this helps make a difference.
Jim, let's let this next question be the last question. This is from Melvin in level 2, the Netherlands. Things from the past are stuck in the physical body, 3D. This week, I had an experience of actively using the tools to clear old emotions and experiences, but there's quite a lot to clear. Any thoughts on clearing old pain stuck in the body?
Well, you have a lot of years of accumulating in a belief system, the 3D world's belief system, accumulating a lot of vibrations, interacting with the world where all those things from the start of this session today, blame and guilt and worry and victim and I'm not doing it right and they don't like me and, my mother said, I don't know why I ever had you. I mean, we've heard that many times. And it's like, that's pretty challenging stuff to hold on to as a kid growing up, and then as an adolescent, and then as a teenager, and then as a young adult. A whole lot of what we're carrying simply is contrary to our well-being. And so this shifting is pulling a lot of that out. So one of the pieces that is useful to recognize of how the mechanics of pain works. You're walking along and you're happy, you're having a good day. It's really a lovely day and it's just Saturday morning, perfect. And as you're walking along, somebody says something to you that is somewhat insulting or somewhat off balance or somewhat disturbing or says something that triggers a whole set of memories. And the mechanics of pain is you are in your space of ease, having a very nice morning. Somebody says something and you immediately drop from the spiritual space, we'll call it of ease, into the mental space. So it's like, whoa, why did he say that? That's not good. Is the mental thought. So you now drop into a space of big hyphen ease. But immediately, because we don't manage thoughts and emotions well in 3D, I have a thought and immediately my fear or anger judgment slams right into it. Or I see something that makes me angry and I immediately have an ugly thought that slams into it. We don't manage ourselves right there. And so all of a sudden the thought, this isn't good, and then the emotion is, oh, this isn't really good. When the emotion happens, the hyphen gets much smaller. Dis-ease. Or ever had a circumstance where you became frightened or threatened and the whole body tightens up in that moment and very rigidly. And then all of a sudden the threat goes away and you try to exhale, but the tension doesn't go away. The tension is still in the body. You eventually relax, but you don't go back to where you were before the threat. And so now, if you hold on to that long enough, I'm not okay, I'm not okay. If somebody simply invalidates you, the body tightens up. It's like, oh, why'd they say that? This isn't good. Body's tight. If you hold that mental, emotional dis-ease long enough, it eventually begins to get into the physical body. There's an inflammation and an irritation and then a swelling maybe, and then things tighten up and then there's a congestion because the tension is all around the heart, let's say, and then you don't know what to do with it. So you try to make a decision. I'm going to put it in the backpack and not worry about this again. And you do, except the tension never went away. And so now that squeezing on the heart or the blood vessels or the tension in the muscles, the body begins to be off balance. And so what was ease that went into dis-ease, then dropped into dis-ease, now drops into disease. There is no hyphen. So the mechanics of this and exactly where we're playing is like that rose or the fourth, fifth, sixth ray, the eighth ray. If I can recognize that this was an event that happened to me in my past, and I'm still holding the emotion attached to it, and so my body is tense around that emotion, and I ask the question, this is an event, a piece of information. Do I have to hold the emotion any longer? Does it have any value to me? And with the tools in level 1 and level 2, literally, all of a sudden you realize, wait, this isn't even mine. And the tension starts to go away because you just recognize the thought and the emotion has no value to me. where I am right now. And you begin to heal the body. But once it gets into that physical body space, it's a little more challenging because the density is much more so than the mental and emotional density. But if you can begin to clear it out at this place right here where the thought and the emotion is in the past and doesn't have value, all of a sudden you begin to start the body regenerating itself back into health. And that's the mechanics of pain. I mean, you can fall down and break your arm. That's a whole different thing. But that pain that we're talking about here is mental and emotional and a tension in the physicalness or a stress in the physicalness or a belief that says, I'm not okay. And the I'm not okay stress creates lots of other damage in the body because we hold it and then believe it. If you're playing in level 2, you're going to find, I think that's what you said, you're going to find at 4th, 5th, 6th ray, the 8th ray, eventually you start to play with sound tones and color codes, and you just start to smooth this stuff out because virtually none of it is yours. And that's the real value. You recognize this isn't even my stuff. And we'll talk about that more as we go forward. So with that said, go off, have yourself a lovely day wherever you are in the world. Play with this concept. The past is information and an emotion. And do you need to hold the emotion? And in present time, you can simply begin to clear an enormous amount of what you hold yourself hostage to, most of which is not even yours. So with that said, go have a great day. Blessings.